It's very sensible. Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Tim. Yes, so so we're going to spend, an hour and a half talking about monsters, and ensembles, and groups, and we have plenty of funny clips and lots of opportunities for interaction. And you can either do that by sticking your hand up, pestering Tim, pestering me, putting stuff in the chat box, pulling funny faces. So most of this is going to be good fun. And yeah, hopefully plenty of interaction and plenty of clips that we can all enjoy. Most of them will be comedy. And hopefully by the end, we'll learn something about sitcoms and how I think sitcoms work, or how I've learned how sitcoms work. And hopefully we'll also understand something about how programs that have a group within them work, and how we can use that knowledge to perhaps create our own stories with a group of characters. Right, we're going to share screen now. You might want to mute, but you don't have to if it's fairly quiet where you are. I think it will probably be okay. It's just to wake you up in case you've been dozing off.
What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? What's that coming over the hill?
There we go. Right. So there's going to be plenty of clips, all be PG, so won't be any warnings in terms of blood or swearing. But of course, spoilers, I'm afraid. Most of these clips are from old programs. So, and obviously all of you too young to remember them, but some of you might. But we don't have to worry about spoilers. There'll be one that's fairly new, which I'll try and warn you about. But even then, it's only the end of the first series, so I think I can probably get away with it. All the clips, as you probably know by now, are just a couple of minutes, and they're pretty low res, but I think because they're short and it's mostly the audio we're interested in, I think we can cope with the low res. And of course, these are mostly old clips, so it's the best I can do. So we've got two parts to tonight's talk. We're going to focus on sitcoms and this theory of the monster. And in the second half, which will be shorter, after the break, we talk about ensembles or groups. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the psychology of groups and how psychology either deliberately has played a part in the creation of some of our most favorite comedy or dramatic ensembles, or may just be coincidence. We'll have to decide for ourselves what the writer or the directors or the producers were thinking about. Okay. So in previous talks, I won't test you on this but I know you all know it. We talked about the basic format of a story. Okay, just in case if you really want to show off, put it in the chat box, and Tim will give you lots of rounds of applause. But we all know stories, 3 acts, a beginning, middle, and end. We'll come back to Aristotle, and everything since Aristotle is pretty much says the same thing he said. But there we go. Aristotle. We'll come back to a friend of his later on. Then we talked about the hero's journey, for those of you who made that talk, which is a concept by Joseph Campbell and his theory of the monomyth, so singular myth, that all stories are based on this idea of a protagonist, a male or female hero that goes on a journey, meets lots of obstacles, and then meets the baddie at the end, may or may not win, and may or may not get what they really need deep inside, okay? And the other thing we talked about was the type of characters our heroes might meet. So you remember I did a talk on the archetypes, character archetypes. These are characters that seem to repeat again and again in stories, in novels, in books, in movies, and they'll probably get told, we're probably told on back as far as sort of, talks around the campfire. We talked about things like the mentor. Do you remember sort of Gandalf and Merlin, of course? We talked about, the buddies. We talked about tricksters like Loki, the new TV series, obviously about Loki. And these characters may or may not help the hero. They might be like the herald that says, come on, hero, go on this amazing journey. Or come on, hero. Do you, which often, I don't know if you've seen lots of programs now with horror. It's a TV report that says, oh, a mysterious asteroid has just landed. And then obviously the monster starts to terrorize. If you've seen A Quiet Place 2, that's how the Herald is effectively the TV news channel saying, oh, look, something strange has just landed. And so we have all these characters that come in different forms. And remember, we talked about how, often the mentor is the older, wise character, but actually you can also subvert that and make it somebody sort of young, or a different sort of format to keep things fresh, which people like James Cameron and people like Spielberg are very good at doing. Right, we're all on the same page. Brilliant. And the focus of the talks has really been on drama. And I think most of the examples I've given have been film, but I think I gave some TV as well. But that doesn't mean that the story format and all those other types of things we've talked about, beginning, middles, and ends, and all the sort of goodies and baddies are not useful for other types of films or TV. And I think there was one that I showed before, I think one that Sue really likes. So Sue, if you know the answer to this, can you remember can you guess what this is going to be? I think Sue's gone for a tea, right. She'll come back and she'll know. Here we go.
A snake's eyes aren't very good, but they can detect movement. So if the hatchling keeps its nerve, it may just avoid detection. A near miraculous escape.
Great, isn't it? Great, that clip. So we talked about drama, and we always talked about conflict, didn't we? That conflict is what drives, stories forward. But even in this is a documentary. There's still conflict, isn't there? Because there's the threat that this poor iguana is going to be eaten. And of course we can see here there's clearly one hero. He's on a journey. He's obviously gone somewhere strange, because you wouldn't expect him probably to go there, or unless he's on a quest, to meet his family in a far-flung hilltop. And here he is. He's got to battle all these obstacles, principally lots of snakes, and reach the top of the mountain. I don't know if anyone's seen My Octopus Teacher. It won the Oscar for Best Documentary. That actually follows this hero's journey. I would say there's a lot of conflict in it, but there's probably also a lot of love, because it's about sort of a man's friendship or love for this octopus. And somewhat fortunately, an octopus lives for a year, and he meets this baby octopus. So he follows this octopus over the year of its life. It's very good. I think it's on Netflix if you want to see it. But again, probably because it just happens to follow the hero's journey, it probably contributed to its winning an Oscar. Tim, you had something? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just I was thinking there in the clip we've just seen, actually, in a way, you could almost make a case for David Attenborough being the mentor, because he's there telling us what the iguana needs to do in order to avoid being attacked, and
that's true. He's more than a narrator, isn't he? He's filling in some of the gaps and acting as a sort of buddy. Yeah, that's interesting, and I suppose that reflects his personality. Think back to the was it the apes, wasn't it? It was one of the very famous clips, wasn't it? Because he didn't just watch them; he actually got involved.
Oh,
yeah.
So
maybe his most. It sounds. I think you're right. Almost his most famous moments seem to be when he gets involved.
Yeah, and when he says, basically, look here, hatchling, you've got to stay still. Not only is he informing us, but it's as if without that bit of information, we're not necessarily aware. And it definitely heightens the excitement, the fact that we think, go on, stay still, and you might not get caught.
That's true. Yeah, yes. And he anthropomorphizes the iguana a little bit, I think, as well, doesn't he? Yeah.
Maybe, I would say.
Yeah. Sorry, Tim?
I said completely, the whole thing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, maybe we're complicit in that, aren't we? In sort of, with that.
Yeah.
Right, so we know now how powerful story structure is applied to other formats. So let's now talk about sitcoms and ensembles, which I don't think we covered very much in previous talks, and it's not covered so much actually in screenwriting books, of which there are dozens, if not hundreds. So let's start with sitcoms. Okay, is I missing a slide there? Oh yeah, here we go. So sitcom, why cover sitcoms and ensembles separately? Why are they sort of excluded from the hero's journey? It doesn't mean it's because they follow different rules, but remember there are no rules. And so I'm sure there are sitcoms and ensembles with a hero's journey, either for one character or more than one character. But let's just, for simplicity, so I don't have to keep saying there are always exceptions, let's all agree there's always an exception. So anything I say is some of the truth, but not all of the truth, and there will always be exceptions. So if you go back to one of our first discussions, we talked about Aristotle, who Aaron Sorkin said, you need to read one book, his book Poetics. And he said there were two types of story, the sort of drama, tragedy, and the comedy. And there was theories that there was a comedy book that he never wrote till it got lost. But Poetics covers the first, and it covers all the things we know about conflict and sort of leading the action and the 3-act structure. Covers most of what we know about stories. And here, I don't know if anyone watched the Friends reunion. Here's one of the most famous sitcoms or ensembles, but principally a sitcom with a group of people. And what is a sitcom? Well, a sitcom stands for situational comedy. So Friends is one of those. And the situation is usually a physical location, but could also be a shared event. So in The Good Place, which we'll have a clip from later if you've not seen it, the action takes place in the hereafter. Or Taxi, it's quite an old one. I think that's is that from the 70s or the 80s? Most of the action takes place in a taxi garage. And I guess in Friends, most of the action takes place in one or two flats. I think the two flats are opposite each other, aren't they? Or the coffee shop, which is called, is it Grand Perk, I think? So it's probably three main locations, aren't there, in Friends? And the situation, if physical, is called a precinct, which is just TV jargon. We don't have to worry too much about it, but it's quite useful to know because you might hear it on, Jed Mercurio will probably say it on some interview. And it's funny, isn't it? Precinct we often think of as a police precinct, but is actually used to refer to, like Holby City, or, that they will be precinct shows. I was thinking about this today, that sitcoms generally are a group of people, but I suppose we could argue there are some exceptions. And I've already said we're going to accept there are always exceptions. And I guess Mr. Bean will be an example of possibly a sitcom. It's certainly a comedy, but it's about one situation But in Mr. Bean's case, although I've not watched many of the cartoons, but as I understand it, pretty much the situation changes in every episode. So he's somewhere different or has something he has to do that he basically screws up. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's what happens when you have a single person sitcom. The situation actually changes, where actually in group sitcoms, the situation generally stays the same, or certainly only a few locations. It's not James Bond where he's in somewhere different every 2 or 3 minutes. Okay. And of course, the UK and the US are probably master of sitcoms. They're cheap to make relatively, although maybe not when Friends gets very successful. I think some of the salaries they were being paid were phenomenal, weren't they? I guess it's also perhaps theatrical in form. If you think about the theatre, there's, and it's mostly dialogue. So that may be why perhaps the US and UK, with a great theatre tradition, perhaps have been very good at sitcoms. I think probably some of the writers have probably come from theatre. I would say there are 2 types of sitcoms. The classic, in the sense that at the beginning of each episode, the situation resets, such as The Simpsons, pretty much whatever, a bit like Tom and Jerry, whatever injuries before the characters, they're miraculously healed at the next episode. Well, the more modern approach, which is more like a serial, with each episode, there's a sort of memory of previous events carried forward. And I'm going to use an example in a moment of Everybody Loves Raymond, which is still shown on Channel 4 every morning. If you haven't seen it, it's very funny, very funny. Now, why is that? We've seen a shift from classic to modern. There might be other terms, from sort of regular to serial. Some of the theories behind this could be to do with DVDs or streaming, creating batch watching binge watching. So people watching multiple episodes in a row. And if you imagine doing that with something like The Simpsons or a show that resets, that could be slightly jarring. It's probably different if you're watching every week. The resets probably sort of seems more natural. Whereas if you're watching something one after the other, the fact that those characters seem to have forgotten what happened 5 minutes earlier will probably seem quite odd. And I think that that's certainly one of the theories why we're seeing more of these sort of sitcoms where they remember what happened before. So yeah, I think in terms of films, generally they're just comedies, aren't they? I'm sure there are comedy films where they're mostly in one location, but I can't think of what's the one with the 2 Jack Lemmon. Was it where they're living in the flat?
The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple.
Yeah, so you could argue maybe that's a sitcom, possibly, Tim. I don't know what you think. I mean, I don't think they're always in the flat, are they? But quite a lot of it.
A long time ago since I saw it.
I can't remember, the series followed the film, or was it the other way around? It might have even been a play, mightn't it? It feels like it could have been a play.
It feels like it could have been a play.
Yeah. So I think you probably wouldn't call any films sitcoms, although I don't know if you've seen Palm Springs, which are not on Netflix, which is very good. It's about 2 characters that seem to be stuck in a time loop, a bit like Groundhog Day. So maybe Groundhog Day and Palm Springs are the closest thing to sitcoms, but I don't think in terms of films, but I don't think that's ever referred to in the advertising or the script writing world.
There was a film of Absolutely Fabulous, wasn't there? AdFab.
Yeah.
Which was a TV sitcom, but then got made into a film.
Yeah. I think they'd probably just call that comedy film, but these, as I say, these are just words that the industry uses. Doesn't mean that.
Woody Allen says Tim.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he definitely writes comedies, doesn't he?
Yeah, I suppose Manhattan, you could argue maybe Manhattan is the situation.
I was just thinking they have a sort of feel of a sitcom about them.
Yes,
in a
that's
way.
true.
It's just like very dialogue heavy.
Yeah.
And it's very much about the way the characters that develop throughout the film interact.
Yeah.
It's hardly a James Bond.
No, that's true.
No.
That's true. Right, so here is the Simpsons, and luckily I found a clip that links on to the theory of the monster. Let's see.
They call me Mellow Yellow, quite rightly. This fellow never bellows, quite rightly. this looks suspicious, but delicious.
Oh, cookie!
Oh, dirty diapers on strings! Oh. Time to put this ordeal behind me.
Homer mad!
Thank God his pants stayed on.
Homer mad! Homer smash! Get revenge on world!
Look, it's the Incredible Hulk.
There you go, monster.
They come.
And here's Everybody Loves Raymond.
Hey. Remember me? You ran into me a few months ago. Actually, it was more than that. You gored me. You ran after me. You caught up with me. And you gored me. Right in the ass. That's right. How'd you do it? Huh? You damn bull.
Robert, I know we're outside, but inside voice.
All right. Look, you're probably just going on instinct, but you really screwed things up for me. I got famous because of you. And not the good kind of famous, but the kind of famous where people point at your butt and laugh. I was in the hospital. That's right. I had to sit on a special pillow. I don't know where your parents are right now, but how would you like to have to go and live with them for a while? My father has always been a very insensitive man. And my mother, well, there's really not enough time.
Hey, Robert, you should probably...
I want him to know.
Hi, Bob.
This was the one. Oh, yeah? Yeah. It felt even bigger. Hey, you hungry? I know if I don't eat, I get all cranky.
Right, I'll stop it there. So there we go. So there's two examples of the two types that you tend to see. I mean, obviously, in the next episode of The Simpsons, he's not going to be green anymore. But you can see in here in Everybody Loves Raymond's, which is still a situation comedy because it's mostly set in Raymond's house, or basically his lounge, his kitchen, or his mother's house, or sometimes his brother's flat. They obviously have a memory of what's happened before. So there was quite a long series here where he was gored by this bull, and actually I think, certainly some of the Simpsons episodes do achieve that level of emotional depth. But I think even from that clip, you can see the advantage of where you bring in some of the past history. It does allow more options, I think, for sort of emotional moments. But both are good. Right, so the monster. Where does this term come from? Well, this comes from the BBC was the first person to mention it, and they were mentioning it to Dave Cohen, whose course I did, which is you can do in London, and he's also written this book called The Comedy Writer, and he said in 2012 the BBC said it was looking for sitcoms featuring monsters and larger than life characters. At that time, they had two new sitcoms, Miranda and Mrs. Brown's Boys. And here I think you can see what they're getting at. You know, Miranda is this tall, single, clumsy, gangly woman running a joke shop, which is just, I think she just gets an inheritance and says, I'll run a joke shop or something. And then you've also got Mrs. Brown's Boys, you know, which is obviously very successful, but its family life revolves around this foul-mouthed elderly woman played by a man. So you would argue these are two monstrous characters that we are unlikely to see in real life. And of course, they're not literal monsters. You know, they are just, you know, sort of main characters who behave in a sort of extreme way. And, you know, pretty much, and obviously usually in social situations is, you know, I mean, they never sort of, they might be awful. I mean, they never, there's probably an invisible boundary they don't cross. They don't usually kill, but certainly they push other people to their limits. They are monstrous. So here's a quick game for everybody. Can you name these monsters? Here we go. You can unmute or put in the chat box. This one.
Where are you pointing?
Left, sorry. Oh, you can't see my mouse. Well, either one. Who's on the left? Victor Meldrew. Yeah, he's pretty. I just remember reading that. So he was a security guard that loses his job and then can't get another job. So he's very grumpy, and he just is miserable, isn't he, all the time? Who's the next one along? The speech on the left. Yeah, David Brent. Okay, so he's a terrible manager. Well, in most ways, he's a terrible manager. He thinks that being entertaining is more important than running the business well. Who's the next one in the uniform?
Captain Mannering.
Captain Mannering. Yes, extraordinary performance, isn't it, Tim? I don't think it was replicated in the recent film, was it?
I don't think so, no. But what actually is the definition of a monster? Because I wouldn't have thought of Captain Mannering as a monster, really. I mean, Basil Fawlty, sorry, I've just given that one away. Basil Fawlty is in a way, but is Captain Mannering a monster? What's the definition?
Well, I think they're all levels of monster. I think, I wonder whether possibly because, I mean, 3 of these are sort of bosses, aren't they? Yeah. Which either makes them worse or better, depending on how you think bosses should behave. I think nowadays we would think bosses should behave not, you know, much better than perhaps we did in the 70s, where bosses could be a bit more, you know, a bit more sort of forceful. And obviously he has the advantage of rank. I think I don't disagree with you, but I wonder whether we're giving him more leeway because he's, you know, he's sort of serving, he's doing his duty. I think he's still pretty monstrous.
I think, despite their monstrous tendencies, the way they work, though, is because there's an element, at least an element, a small element, it may be a big element, about them that we all love or recognise within ourselves. We can all see a bit of Victor Meldrew within ourselves. We all like to have a moan about, I don't know, the gas or whatever, people digging up roads.
And I certainly... You're right, Tim, because Ricky Gervais has said that it's a more extreme version of himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, I struggle to find anything bad about Miranda at all.
Yes, I think she's more in the jokey sense of she's more of a clown, I suppose, than a monster.
Well, does that mean that Mr. Bean is a monster? Because he's a kind of clown, isn't he?
Yeah, so maybe they're more clown-like, but you know, so maybe there's, I mean, of course, there's probably a range of monsters, and I'm going to give you some examples where I don't know the answer, and we can maybe debate it. But I think you're right. Maybe there's the sort of the funnier, sillier kind of end is the clown, and then maybe, as I'll show you, there's a few that are far more, you know, clearly monsters and quite horrible. You know, I
think Mr. Bean is monstrous in that he's very selfish. He's shown to be selfish nearly all the time, and he gets his comeuppance because of it, which we all love. Of course.
Yes, and you'll see, we definitely see selfishness as a monstrous characteristic. Okay, well, we got 100% on that. That was good. Here's one that maybe is, you know, it took me a while to sort of convince myself that this was a monster.
Giselle's not getting kicked off. It's totally gonna be summer. What?
Just Sheldon's onion ring. Just put it back.
It's one onion ring.
Put it back before he comes. No, I don't think that's where it was.
Okay, here he comes. Deny, people. Wall of silence.
Who touched my foot?
Penny did it.
Why would you do that?
I don't know. I was hungry. What's the big deal?
The big deal is that nobody touches food on my plate.
All right, look, I didn't know. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, but that is your second strike.
What?
You have 2 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. It's a sports metaphor.
A sports metaphor.
Yes, baseball.
All right, yeah, I'll play along. What was my first strike?
March 18th, you violated my rule about forwarding email humor.
I did?
The photo of the cat who wants to has cheeseburger.
Oh, come on. Everybody loves lol cats. They're cute and they can't spell because they're cats.
I trusted you with my email address, and you betrayed that trust by sending me internet banality, strike 1. Touching my food, strike 2. Don't worry, they only stay on your record for a year.
You can get them removed early, but you have to take his class.
Oh, come on. I touched one onion ring.
And then you put it back, compromising the integrity of all the other onion rings.
Oh, honey, the buses don't go where you live, do they?
Look, Penny, I wish I could be more lenient with you, but since you've become a permanent member of our social group, I have to hold you to the same standards as everybody else.
Congratulations, you're officially one of us.
One of us. One of us.
Well, what a thrill.
You're sitting in my spot.
Oh, gee, you've got to be kidding me.
Leonard, she's in my spot.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. After you leave, I still have to live with him.
I don't care. I'm taking a stand. Metaphorically.
All right, that's it. Strike 3.
Ooh, strike 3. I'm banished? What the hell kind of crap is that?
Don't worry, I'll talk to him.
Yeah, you do that.
Just so I know, would you be open to taking his class?
Okay. That's the Big Bang Theory. I think it's finished about a year ago, didn't it? And I think perhaps I had trouble recognizing that Sheldon was the monster here because he has quite similar traits to me. And I think also I've worked with a lot of these sort of people as well. And so I perhaps have more sympathy for his type of behaviors. But I think you can see here, I think this must be one of the early episodes because, I mean, obviously she sat in his seat and everyone knows you can't do that. I mean, he's monstrous in the sense of the small. So all the things that are small that should not matter to most people are very important to him, which makes him really, really annoying. Okay. So, and the whole of this social network revolve around his whims. And as Tim S has said, we're going to get onto why, and others have said, why do we like these sort of characters? And here's to go on to the example of selfishness. So this is the one spoiler warning, really. This is the end of season 1. And this is the main character. She's Eleanor Shellstrop. Strop's probably quite a good name to have for how she behaves. And she is one of 4 characters that have appeared at the same time in the hereafter called The Good Place. And they're in this place that seems wonderful. You can have as much frozen yogurt as you like. You get to stay in these extraordinarily, bizarrely designed places. And she appears to be the monster until the end of season 1.
Only reason I'm going is because this real Eleanor is going. If you go, it doesn't make sense for me to go. No, look, you're not listening to me.
Holy mother-forking shirt balls.
What?
Oh, man. Wow. Okay. Woo! Yo, Mikey, Sean, come on out.
Is everything okay?
Right as rain, Mikey, my boy. So, Chidi and I are gonna go to the bad place.
What?
Trust me, I've got this. That's our decision. Let's hit it.
What about real Eleanor?
No, it's me and Chidi. Call the train.
Point of order. I don't accept this offer. The real mistakes were Jason and Eleanor.
Ga, 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 ga. You said any two of us. It's me and Chidi. Let's do it to it.
Michael, I just found an obscure precedent in the rules that might just save everyone.
Buzz off, Bomba John. Don't need it.
Oh, okay.
Ready when you are, boss.
Eleanor, what's going on?
It took me a while to figure it out. But just now, as we were all fighting and yelling at each other and each one of us demanding we should go to the bad place, I thought to myself, man, this is torture. And then it hit me. They're never gonna call a train to take us to the bad place. They can't, because we're already here. This is the bad place.
Oh, man. I can't believe you figured it out. Oh, God. You ruined everything. You know that?
So sorry if you haven't seen that. I've spoiled that into season 1 now. So in the first series, she is bloody annoying and she tries to disrupt all the activities, doesn't want to go to the welcome party, doesn't want to do a speech. And then she realizes, of course, the end of series 1, they're not in heaven, they're actually in hell. And this is a new type of hell created by the Ted Danson character, where instead of pointy sticks and flames, they're just irritated every day by things not being quite perfect. So hence frozen yogurt rather than ice cream. So every minute they're given something not quite right. Look at the paintings on the wall, it's clowns. I mean, you'd think that'd be nice, but it's horrific. And of course she realizes, because she's the hero, she's clever. She realized that Ted Danson, he's not an angel, he's actually a devil. He's actually a demon. So really, the monster of the show is Ted Danson. So the cleverness of the writing here is really to make you think this is the monster and everything revolves around her selfishness. And then, of course, at the end, you realize they're not revolving around her and her disruption of the system. They're actually revolving around him. He is the monster. But, it can be, he's a literal monster, if not maybe the monster in terms of sitcoms. And you'll see this repeated in something else in a minute. Right, so what makes a monster? Well, we've sort of already answered that question. So they tend to be the protagonist. And actually in subsequent series of the Good Place, Ted Danson's character sort of does become the protagonist, because once he's a demon, he decides he wants to be a human. So he then has to go on this journey to go from demon to human. So he sort of does become the protagonist. Anyway, like I said, there's no rules, they're all exceptions. They tend to be larger than life. She's extraordinarily selfish, this character, but most main characters are. We talked about Miranda. They tend to lack self-awareness. They don't realize how ridiculous they are. Sheldon never realizes how ridiculous his foibles are. They tend to have hideous habits. I don't know if anybody watches Friday Night Dinners. Paul Ritter is constantly blowing his nose and all these sort of not wearing a top, all these ridiculous things, eating flour with a spoon. They tend to be unlovable, unlikable. Maybe, maybe at the beginning, but I think somehow we do like them. Obviously Tim S likes Miranda, I think, and who doesn't? But they're strangely compelling, if not maybe traditionally lovable or likable. So why is this? We think, is it because, why do we think? Does anyone want to think why? There's no right answer. Why are they compelling? What do we think? What do we think?
I think, and part of it must be, like I hinted at a bit earlier, they reflect parts of ourselves that perhaps we're not too proud of.
Yeah. I think that's one reason. They're a mirror to ourselves, and maybe they're also a mirror to other people.
Yeah.
Well,
why would we like them if they're demonstrating bits of ourselves that we don't like in ourselves?
The question was, why are they strangely compelling?
Yes, yes. I think they're unlikable, but they're compelling. Yeah. And Sue says, maybe I'll come on to this. I think Sue's right as well. Maybe they're also, because we can sort of, we can like the fact that we can say, oh, we're not like that. So maybe there's a bit of both, or a bit of that, but actually we're not like that. Or if I say I'm a bit like Sheldon, I can say, oh, well, he's the most important character. So it's all different. Yeah, there's lots of things going on, I think, you know, but yeah, I've got a few coming up. But I just thought I'd show you one more clip of perhaps the most sort of recent monster.
You're almost late. Let's do a flash poo and prep. Oh, Christ, did you wash your hands? Of course not. Oh my God, you are disgusting. Fucking hell. Hair looks nice. Oh, fuck off. Don't get drunk and shit in your sink again. When are you going to stop bringing that up? When you do something better? I have 2 degrees, a husband, and a Burberry coat. You shat in a sink.
To Women Speak, opening women's mouths since 1998. Please raise your hands if you would trade 5 years of your life for the so-called perfect body.
We are bad feminists. Patching's up with Harry? Yeah, we're engaged. God, what? No, we're not engaged. The next man who walks in here is getting ridden to death. Dad!
Hi.
Not ideal. You okay? You look stressed. Well, I'm successful, so...
Oh my God, man. The shaking too much. Oh my God. Oh my God.
You're all...
Right, so yeah, that's Fleabag. I saw on Twitter today, there was this thing about famous person have you sat next to, and somebody said they sat next to Phoebe and then told her at the appropriate moments in the intermission that Fleabag changed her life, and Phoebe just shot back, "Me too." So just shows you how obviously how quick-minded she is. Well, there's Fleabag. I mean, we can argue about whether she's a monster. I mean, she certainly, in just those clips, she does monstrous things. But somehow, I think, you know, they fascinate us, don't they? And I think maybe in her case in particular, because we learn in the first series about this awful thing that's happened to her, maybe we also have some sympathy for her. But that's not the same with all these monstrous characters. They don't all have this tragic backstory that she did. And of course, in the backstory, of course, she maybe precipitated her friend's suicide, you know. I mean, I've just put down some reasons. You've come up with some great ones. Maybe they fascinate. Maybe they prepares us for when we have to meet one or work with one. We can enjoy their actions, like Sue said, vicariously. We can sort of think, oh gosh, that's fun, but at least that's not us. And maybe we root for them to be better. You know, maybe we hope that they'll become less monstrous. You know, maybe there's something about that, because we like to see characters change, don't we? But of course, if they change to be less monstrous, they sort of become less interesting, which is possibly why sitcoms often have reset. So they, you know, they'll be monstrous and then they'll realize the error of their ways. And certainly in the early few series of The Simpsons, Homer tended to realize he'd been an asshole and then was really nice at the end. And then he could obviously reset and be an asshole again and then be nice to his family at the end. And that sort of worked, you know, so you could still have the excitement of being a Wally, but, you know, you also got the enjoyment, the fact you watch Homer change over the course of maybe 10 minutes, 20 minutes, not sure. So that could be why we care about monsters. We've come up with our own list. So how do we find monsters? Dun, dun, dun. How do we hunt for monsters? Well, where might we find a monster? The workplace, maybe. Yeah, so we think of the office, the home, where we've seen quite a few examples of that. School, there may be less examples of that. Dairy girls, possibly. holiday. Yeah. I've left out one. I'm sure some of you might consider, where might you be trapped with a monster? Where might you not be able to get away? Keeps causing trouble. Or neither. Maybe neither are a monster. They're both equal. They're both sort of protagonists who basically want, you know, what both can't have the same thing. Barrowcliff wants peace and order, and Fletcher wants trouble.
If I remember rightly, Merlin, that was Mackay, and Barrowclough was a much softer screw.
Yes, okay, so maybe Mackay is the monster, do you think?
I'm just wondering if the prison is the monster. Would that make any sense? Probably not. The circumstance.
Yeah, I suppose in some ways, yeah, the situation can be a character. They sometimes, you know, like a haunted house. They argue, don't they? The house is a character.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something there. I think the monster thing doesn't work perfectly in all things. I think we said with a good place in this, maybe it's less likely. But I think Mackay, he's the prison top governor. He's not in every episode that much, is he?
No, this is Mackay.
Oh, this is Mackay.
This is Mackay. Yeah.
This is Mackay. Yeah. So well, okay. So you think Mackay is actually not monstrous? He's actually kind.
I'm just chucking ideas around, really.
I think the suggestion is that Mackay is the monster, possibly. But Barrowclough, who you mentioned, he's another prison guard.
Oh, I got the name wrong. Sorry.
He's a very soft character, yeah.
Yeah, the sort of one who's into social awareness.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Sort of thing.
I did mean this one. I just got the name wrong.
And when Barrowclough comes in, Fletcher is very much the monster because he's continually taking advantage of Barrowclough.
Right.
So you're right. You know, Fletcher is also a monster. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
So maybe there's two monsters fighting it out then.
Yeah.
Barrowclough is very gullible, isn't he?
That's right. He's the sort of podgy one.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for that. Right. Now, one thing you tend to see a lot in sitcoms is either they tend to be families. So it's a common setup, and it's instantly recognizable. That possibly helps in terms of engagement with the audience. And then, of course, there's characters that we recognize. There's plenty of examples. I'm sure you've got a few more. I've got butterflies. So that should be bread. I'll show you a clip in a minute. Malcolm in the Middle, Modern Family, which I guess shows, you know, as the title says, modern versions of family. But they often subvert or exaggerate the traditional setup or show something specific. Friday Night Dinners is a family. It is a sitcom, but it's always on, well, almost always on Friday night. I'm sure we can think of plenty of other examples. And you can even look at Porridge there. And actually, maybe, sort of Mackay's the grandfather, Fletcher's the son, and then maybe Lenny is the grandson. So you could even say it's a bit like hierarchical, family. And then, of course, if you go as far as Only Fools and Horses, you literally do have the three generations of men. So a family is a common example of sitcoms. And here's structure for sitcoms. Here's the example I mentioned, the Boswells.
Gotta get up, gotta get out. Grab the world by the throat and shout. Gotta find it, get us a shell. Making bread out of nothing but air. Friday night, then hitting the ground. Catching a penny, but missing the pound. Doesn't matter, cause we'll soon turn it around. Soon as we get home, we make it and we take it home. Nothing's gonna break it home. We'll keep it in the family. We'll be right at home.
From where I stand, it looks like a very tired version of the Last Supper. Put yourself together, come on. I've made the breakfast, I'm not going to feed you.
Can I have some breakfast, ma'am?
Sit down, love. Everything all right over the road?
Yeah, fine.
You should be having breakfast with your wife.
She was up all night with Francesca, teething or something. So they're both asleep. I'm starving.
Well, couldn't you make your own breakfast then?
No, I couldn't. Like the rest of you.
Don't think I'd like it, Billy, if my husband kept going across the road to his mum's for breakfast.
You do remember, do you? Getting married?
I'm only visiting.
Of course you are, and welcome you are, love.
Aren't I included in the family unit now? I'm married then. All this big talk about trust and loyalty and sticking together. I'll go and have breakfast in my own and we've got an egg somewhere.
Sit down, Billy. And when you do go over the road, take a food parcel. The violins are worn out here.
Oh, see, I'm left with whole-eaten buds again.
Why? Which one did you want, love?
Those.
He always wants the ones I've got.
Who's got the brand puppets? Swap for Frosty Crispies.
Oh, go on, then.
Where's the plastic frog? Look, I know it seems trivial, but I'm a creature of habit. And unless I have my sugar-free raisin toast...
Oh, God, here are then.
No, you've handled them now.
Billy, there's the milk. Go and get an extra pint. You're dressed.
I'm not dressed. I went to bed like this.
Go ahead, Billy.
You went to bed with your clothes on.
I was tired, wasn't I? I have got a wife and a baby and a son.
There we go, isn't that? That's sort of, you know, just that sort of that family setup, isn't it? You just, and there's, you know, the mother, you know, would be the sort of monster in our theory here. You know, the matriarch, you know, constantly trying to keep them under control, and a bit like sort of the prison porridge scenario, they're all causing trouble, and she and the oldest son trying to keep them under control, on the straight and narrow. My other family, well, of course, sometimes people refer to this about being at work, don't they? You know, my other family, or my other husband, or my other wife, as some people talk about their workmates. So often the family structure that's clearly evident there, even though that's, you know, it's obviously a large family, lots of kids, is often recognizable within precincts other than the home. And of course, we can think of things like Brooklyn 999, 99, and other types of precincts where you can almost match the sort of traditional family structure of mother, father, and kids to the sort of precinct itself. Maybe you could do it with even something like Line of Duty. And certainly, I've got the example I'm going to show you is an old one, Maplin's, but it's just such a good start to a series that it's sort of I think it's worth showing. And so the example you're going to see is going to introduce some of these characters. And here is my suggestion of how you could map them to a family structure. You have the new father. I'm not saying that happens very often within family structures, although I suppose you might consider, situations perhaps after the war. I suppose there might have been situations that people might remember where the father was killed during the war, and maybe then there was a new husband did come into the family setup. And in this case, I think you probably all know with two actors, but this is the first actor, comes in as the boss, Geoffrey Fairbrother, the mother, Gladys Pugh, and we'll see what and you'll see then my suggestion of why she's the mother in the clip. And then you've got the oldest child, Ted Bovis, although I think in real life he was quite a lot older than he played in the character. The middle child, comic, his understudy, the younger brother, or and then the youngest child, I would say, you could argue the youngest child is, Peggy, who behaves like a tiny little girl, doesn't she? So let's watch the clip. And I think this might be the last one before the break. Yes, so enjoy the last clip before the break. And I've got a little homework for you if you're willing to do it. Here we go.
Hello, campers. Rise and shine. Well, it's a beautiful Maplin's morning, and we've got lots of Maplin's fun in store for you today. Breakfast will be served in half an hour.
Blasted row. Here, what's punched you in the wash basin?
I had to leave him in soak all night. Some flipping kid tried to feed him on ice cream. He won't do it again. I hit him in the crocodile.
I don't want to shave in the same wash basin as Punch has been sitting in all night. You never know what he's been up to.
Sort of.
Oh, that noise. I told you to get us a chalet further away from the speaker, but do you do anything about it? No.
We could have had a chalet further away from the speaker. It was also further away from the loo. And you know the trouble you had last season.
Wake up, Ted.
What's the time?
7:30.
What's the rush?
Well, breakfast starts at 8. I've got to get over the dining hall, give him the first laugh of the day.
What are you this morning?
Funny baby.
How's that, eh? Not that.
The trouble is, my nappy keeps slipping off.
Come in.
Good morning.
Morning, Daddy.
I was passing the kitchen. Thought you might like a cup of tea.
Oh.
Sugar's in the saucer.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that dressing gown's nice. Is it real silk?
No, I really don't know.
You can usually tell by the touch. Beautiful. Got some lovely things.
Thank you.
Well, I'll meet you in the office at 9. I come straight from my Keep Fit class. I might be out of breath. You won't mind if I pant a bit, will you?
You were late in last night, too. Were you with that blonde girl?
Yeah. We were chased 3 times round the camp by the security guard.
Did he catch you?
Did he? Car wasn't born yesterday.
Shall I bring you some breakfast back?
No, I couldn't face bacon and eggs swimming in fat.
Well, I'll make you up a sandwich then, just the baked beans and tinned tomatoes.
No, I'm going to have a lie. Give me a call at 10 to 9.
Right. See ya.
Right, there we go. So, I mean, that's, I think, if I'm right, that is the first couple of minutes of the very first, episode. I think it ran for several years, didn't it? I mean, how extraordinary is that to set up, these characters so quickly? You already get a sense of the fact that the Punch and Judy man doesn't like children. You already get a sense that he's this chap's here is a bit of a layabout, even though he's quite a responsible person, but clearly, he's obviously very knowledgeable. And you got that lovely dynamic, haven't you, of Gladys and the boss, and how, clearly what she feels about him. And you can see that's obviously going to run, isn't it? And it sort of fits that sort of mother-father type relationship. So there you go. So you can base sitcoms around families. Right, so we've got a break coming up. Whoops. Yeah, let's stop sharing. Right, I've got a break coming up. Let's see if I can copy this. Oh, no. And you've got some homework should you wish to do it, or you can just go and get yourself a nice G&T. But the next section is going to be about psychology and personality types. Should you wish to know your own personality type?
Psychopath.
Well, we know that's definitely yours, Tim. You can do that test in the break, and then we can.
Oh, that's in chat, right?
Yeah. So I can't remember how long it takes. So don't panic if you don't have time, or you don't finish it before we get back. I think you can come back to it. And I say if you don't feel comfortable doing it or sharing afterwards, that's fine. If it's upsetting, if you think it might upset you or it'd be upsetting, don't do it. Don't do it. But it's just a bit of fun, and it will just give you some clues about what I'm going to do later on.
Have you done the test, Merlin?
Yeah, a while ago. Yeah.
I pasted my type into the chat.
I think I'm NJ leader. I think it came out as
leader.
I think so. If that is a category, I can't remember.
No.
I remember at university I was team member. So you can change. Your personality type can change over your life. It can change the scenarios you're in.
Yeah.
If you become a leader, it can go towards that way. If you're in a team, you can go more to the team. So.
Have you studied Melvin team roles?
Yeah, I've done a few different types. I've done the colours, I've done the Belbin stuff. Yeah. I
forget which this one is, but it's quite a well-known type, I think, isn't it?
I think it is, yeah. I can't, yeah.
Merlin, can I apologise because I realised my mic was live when I was having a text dialogue, sorting out a drama. So I apologise. My phone would have been bleeping.
That's all right. We heard a couple of funny noises, but it didn't bother me.
I always curse when somebody leaves their microphone open, but there it was me.
Yeah, that's fine. I've done it.
It wasn't too intrusive.
Good. Yeah. Apologies. I'm a campaigner. I don't know what that means, but
campaigner.
Oh.
Is that good?
My friend Euphoria is a campaigner. She's very supportive. every time we sort of say I'm working on something, she goes, "That's brilliant. Keep going, keep going." It's really lovely. It's a lovely person to have in a group or committee or a family.
That's interesting.
Like a supporter.
I haven't worked out. There's ENFPA and ENFPT. What were the? Mine's an A, but what's a T?
Turbulent, I think. If you look
okay.
at categories, you get a load of categories.
I don't remember that bit.
Oh, one minute.
Oh, here we are. Yeah, you're right. I've just found a link for it.
They may have updated it since I did it.
I'm an assertive campaigner as opposed to a turbulent campaigner.
Oh, okay, that's new.
No.
But most of mine were, fairly in the middle. I mean, the biggest difference between mine were thinking and feeling. I was 57% thinking, 43 feeling, but none of them were like 90-10 or anything like that. That was the biggest difference.
How do you feel about your category, Tim, entrepreneur? Or
I've never thought of myself as an entrepreneur.
I know when you describe your career sounds quite entrepreneurial because you've been successful at different careers.
I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose in that way, but I've never sort of
started a company or something, or
traded through various companies as a contractor. But yeah, but I've never sort of thought, I'm going to be like Richard Branson or anything like that.
When you've worked in those companies, have you tended to come up with solutions or solve problems?
Not in a big way,
no.
Because what's my thing going on? As an employee, I never fitted into the employee psychology. I was never a good employee.
So maybe you were a frustrated entrepreneur.
I was much happier as a contractor because the deal was, I went to work for so many hours, I did my job, I went home. As an employee, the deal was you up to try and get the next promotion, and therefore you have to, to the boss and all that sort of stuff. And I was never really good at that.
So you maybe have the mindset of an entrepreneur without actually wanting to. You were sort of your own business in a way, you could argue.
As a contractor, you definitely feel like you're in your own business, because you can sack your boss as a contractor, and I did that a couple of times. You can say, right, I'm walking away, I'm fed up with this contract, these situations or whatever. And at the same time, they can sack you, which they did as well sometimes.
Yeah.
But sometimes it was my fault, and sometimes it was their fault, and sometimes it was just bad luck.
How did everyone else get on? Anyone else want to share? You don't have to.
I'll tell you one thing though, I've done 2 independent tests in the past, which both identified me as being right in the middle of introvert and extrovert. And this one is also very close, 52-48. So that's where I am.
Yeah, I would say you're able to adapt to both forms.
Yeah. Were you trying to say something, Tim?
I was only going to let you into the secret that I'm apparently a virtuoso.
I think we could all have suggested that.
Virtuoso.
With an A on the end, which I think the suggestion for what other people said, that means assertive, which, yeah, maybe.
Well, I've come out as advocate, whatever that is. What's an advocate?
Interesting.
And I'm introverted. Intuitive.
Yeah. I'd say so.
Feelings and judges and turbulent. I'm totally opposite to how I was when I was young.
Oh, okay.
And like people say, oh, the older you get, you don't care about like what, you're more extroverted and you don't care about what other people think about you. But it's the opposite for me, because when I was young, I was like full of energy and full of this and full of that. But now I'm much more introverted, and I don't go out and about anymore.
Yeah, we were just talking about that, how I think it can change with age or situation.
Yeah. Did anyone have extreme scores on any of these different axes that you marked on?
I got a 60-40 on one of them. That's prospecting. I can't remember what the
other one was judging.
Judging, yeah. So I wasn't quite sure what that was. Haven't got to that section of reading it yet, but yeah. So I've got a 60.
I got a 6. Sorry, Tim.
Go ahead, Jim.
I got a 65 on prospecting.
Oh, wow.
I don't know what, and I got a 73 on intuitive.
Ooh.
And a 61 on a 61 on assertive, and I'm not assertive.
Okay.
I'm telling you.
You're not assertive, okay. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, thanks all for having a go. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed having a little go.
Merlin, are we monsters?
What's the psychology of a monster?
Yeah, we'll all have to decide that at some point. Yeah.
I'm more concerned about those that haven't come back yet, when they've thrown themselves off Clifton.
Self-awareness is like, I never realised I was. Yeah, I think you take it with a pinch of salt. I mean, I think when I did it in my writing group, we all felt fairly comfortable with what we'd come out as, and we also sort of felt each other had come out with what we are. But it doesn't mean you have to define you as a person. It's just a snapshot of who you might be at the moment, you know.
It's a fairly crude thing.
Yeah.
So,
well,
Patrick is also an entrepreneur, it seems.
Yeah.
Should
we crack on? Should we crack on, Tim?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Ensembles. Let's share screen. Ensembles. Well, thanks for coming back. Gin and tonic must have run out. Tim's going to do a bit of acting with me now.
Oh, right.
Tim, if you can be on the left in blue, and then I'll continue. I'll be red.
Okay. Wait a minute. Something's bothering me.
Yes, I know. Most, if not all, sitcoms are ensembles.
Oh, I see.
Not all ensembles are comedies.
Okay, I get it, but they have a monster or a family structure.
Some do, some don't.
Oh, okay. So what's this bit about?
This section is on how you can use psychology to design an ensemble.
Oh,
great. So thanks, Tim. Thanks everyone for having a go at self-analysis. And let's have a nice clip to get us going.
In 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
Brilliant. So I'm welling up now. Blimey, that takes me back. So what do we get? I mean, I think this is an extraordinary, I mean, I know they don't do starts to shows much like this anymore, but you know, that's the start to every show. And it's a bit like a sitcom, and then it's, from our memory, it tends to reset every episode. But what do we get? You can obviously unmic, unmute, or put in the chat. What do we get from this to start? This is just the introduction, the opening credits to this show. What do we know about what this show is going to be about? What does it tell us about who's going to be in it?
Yes. 4
characters. What do we know about these characters, just generally?
A bunch of idiots.
They're different, I would say. I mean, none of them are the same. What do we know anything about their characters? Do we think?
Yeah, it gives an indication of their personalities and how their different personalities might help them as a team solve the problems that they face.
Yeah, so we get a sense of who they are, they're all different, what their personalities are. We get their names. We also get their rank in some cases. I mean, for some reason, the two middle characters don't get their character name. I don't understand what's gone wrong there. We get the backstory to the show. We know there's going to be explosions. I mean, it's extraordinary in a minute and a half, you know, to set up a show. Fantastic, fantastic.
But having said that, you can never do that with a show nowadays because people just don't have the attention span. You've got to have intro and then you're straight into it, really.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, it's not the modern way of introducing a show, but I think, you know, I was watching, you know, but, you know, it doesn't mean it couldn't be done this way. I'm sure there are some shows that might do this. I mean, I watch Friday Night Dinners quite a lot. And, you know, it just has the characters and a blue screen of the house. So, you know, it's a middle-class family and the 4 characters, but you don't know anything about the characters. So it's not quite as long an opening, but, you know, I'm not saying it's wasted, but it's more sophisticated, but you get so much more from this one. Of course, by the second series, you probably don't need this, but they obviously felt you needed it for at the time. Okay, let's keep going. Right. Ensembles. I mean, obviously, this is probably a word that's very familiar to Tim. I think it's certainly that sort of, you know, sort of has a theatrical feel. So we're going to have different types of ensemble. Here's the one I gave you, was an army unit. You know, they were clearly in a unit together, and they coming back together after leaving the army. There's flatmates, you know, being human, I suppose. We have families. We talked about Only Fools and Horses. Work colleagues like The Office, or stuck together, you know, in sort of like in prison, like we talked about. We even Lost. Did anyone watch the series Lost? You know, where they were, you know, plane crashes and they're all stuck on an island together. So it's a really common format, isn't it, for TV, certainly more than film, where you get a group of people with maybe a singular purpose. You know, teachers, they're all teachers. Casualty, they're all doctors or nurses, and you give them generally a singular purpose. I suppose in Lost, they're trying to survive, aren't they, or get off the island, you know. And certainly we see it more in TV. It's a Sin, Succession, Line of Duty, Lost, Tenko. One interesting example maybe is Mission Impossible. I don't know if anyone remembers the TV series. That certainly had a very sort of feel as an ensemble. Most ensembles do, and there's not necessarily always a very clear lead character. There's much more equanimity between the characters, unlike Fleabag, you know, where she's clearly the main character. In these more ensemble shows, traditionally ensemble, there's more even spread. Of course, in Mission Impossible, certainly the TV series, I think it felt more even than the film, where the film clearly became somewhat of a Tom Cruise vehicle. Now, whether that's because it's Tom Cruise and he wants more screen time, or whether it's probably more likely that in a feature film over 90 minutes, you possibly have to be more focused on one character, whereas TV, you know, like Game of Thrones or Sandman that's coming out, you probably have got more time to develop characters. Even It's a Sin, you might have heard that was compressed down from 7 or 8 episodes down to 5, which I think makes the character development a little bit overly condensed, but still, you know, it's still a great show, and just shows you that, you know, often TV with that longer period certainly works really well for ensemble type stories.
Did you mention Police?
Police, yeah, Police is a good one. Yeah, I put work colleagues. So yeah, Police, hospitals. I think there was even one set in a registry office, wasn't there? Vicar of Dibley, I suppose. You could have other types of working environments like that, of stuck in a village maybe, or prisoner. Yeah, stuck in the village, you know. Yeah. So it gives you lots of scope. Get a group of people and stick them somewhere, or give them a common purpose, like the A-Team, where they go on an adventure every week. Right, we're going to go back in time. It sort of comes full circle. The first talk on Aristotle, well, probably my last talk for a while on Hippocrates, lived about 50 years later. He was a physician this time. He believed that personality traits or human behaviors are based on 4 separate temperaments associated with 4 fluids. I think temperament is a word we'd be familiar with now. maybe less about fluids and humors as being relevant. But anyway, these were the 4 fluids or humors that he referred to. So he felt there were 4 types of people, and they fitted into one of these 4 categories. They could be sanguine, which is after the word red from the heart, choleric, yellow from the liver, bile, melancholic, black from kidneys, or phlegmatic, white from the lungs, I guess spit, be white. Okay. So here's somebody thousands of years ago suggesting there are 4 personality types. Okay, you did a test that suggests there were 16. Here he's saying he thought there were 4, based on quite strange logic though. But maybe, as you might see, maybe his assessment was correct, but the reasons for those 4 types was wrong. Clearly nothing to do with, so there's no evidence to do with anything to do with our organs in our body. So I put them in a grid here with the descriptions that he gave to each one. Let's move this up here. Go. Yeah, sanguine. He said people who were sanguine were optimistic, active, and social. He said people who were choleric were egocentric and extroverted. People who were melancholic were serious, introverted, and cautious. And those were phlegmatic were reasonable, calm, and patient. Okay, so if you lived in those times, you might be classed as one of those 4. Okay. So let's have a go with these 4 characters, and just out of curiosity, could they possibly fit? What a coincidence, there is 4. Could they fit into one of those 4 boxes? Will they fit in separate boxes? Who could possibly guess the outcome? But we'll have a go. So who do we think of the 4 is perhaps, obviously my answers could be different from yours, that's okay. Who do we think of the 4 is the most optimistic, active, and in my view, the sort of social? Who is the one that's asked to do the persuading? Can anyone remember the TV series?
And they call him Face.
Face, that's right, Face. He was the one that was always asked to charm the woman, wasn't he? So I would suggest he is Mr. Sanguine. Who do we think is the egocentric one, who likes to be the center of attention, and the most extroverted? Somebody who might dress up as a giant alligator. I'm obviously leading the witness here. So I would say Hannibal Smith, the one with the cigar. Who is the one that they rescue? Who is the one they might rescue from a lunatic asylum who's going to kill himself?
The crazy one.
Yes, Howling Mad Murdoch. So I would suggest, and it sounds like I may be persuading you as well, that he's the serious, introverted, and cautious one. Maybe, I'm not saying it's all perfect, but it's close. And that leaves us with B.A. Baracus, who's reasonable, calm, and patient, but not always.
No.
When is he not calm? Can anyone think of something that triggers his anger almost every episode? When he's made to do something that we've not been allowed to do for a year and a half.
Get on a plane.
Get on a plane. He's not very happy about getting on a plane. So they normally drug him, I think, don't they? Or hit him over the head or something, yeah. I can't remember. Or trick him or something. So generally he's quite calm, but a bit like the Hulk. He often goes completely bonkers at some point, like we saw in that clip kicking down the door. So I may have persuaded you that this is the way I would put it. Face, Hannibal Smith. Face is sanguine. Choleric, Hannibal Smith. Melancholic, Howling Mad Murdoch. And phlegmatic, B.A. Baracus. He's certainly quite, he's certainly quite pragmatic. Okay, so I mean, interestingly there. Again, if it's I've partly deliberately picked a show with 4 characters, but if you start to think about it, many of the famous shows do have 4 characters, and I'm going to give you a few more examples.
I'll give you one. Red Dwarf. Red Dwarf.
Red Dwarf, yeah. Well, I've got an answer for that coming up in a minute. Red Dwarf, yeah. There's another famous one involving cities and sex. Probably Sue's favourite programme, Sex in the City. Or maybe Tim's favourite programme. And here's one we talked about earlier. Here we go. What's this one? Does anyone recognise the names?
Big Bang.
Big Bang Theory, yeah. So Howard is the Jewish one. Leonard is the engineer. Now, if you remember, so that's, if we look back, so if we think of the A-Team, Hannibal Smith is sort of, in the end, the sort of leader, quiet and the clever one. Can you remember what famously Leonard does, but the other three don't do? He becomes an astronaut. And most physicists...
No, that's Howard. Howard's the astronaut.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Howard's the astronaut.
He's the engineer.
That's right, yeah, so he's the astronaut, yeah. Yes, I think maybe, yeah, sorry, Leonard's the everyman, that's right, yeah, Leonard's the everyman. Sorry, yes, that's correct. So Leonard is sort of the one that goes out with Penny. So he's sort of a leader in that sort of way, the more normal of the four. And then Rajesh, he's the one that can't talk to girls. And he is often the one that is the most miserable. And then Sheldon Cooper, I've put him as the phlegmatic one, which is, as you can see, that's the reasonable, calm patient. Again, yeah, he's reasonably calm most of the time until he loses it. Yeah. Again, not, I say it's a reasonable fit, but not perfect. But you can see how useful it is. How useful it is, or how at least interesting it is, I'll say, maybe not useful, how interesting it is how we can match fairly well these characters to these personality traits created 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. More, yeah, 2,000 years ago. Any other theories? Yes, well, you've done one, of course, but here's this other one. A study in 2016 also found there was 4 personality types. And this is what they found. They found there was that 20% of the population were optimistic. And I've matched that to sanguine, because we saw that as a description from Hippocrates. 20% pessimistic. That seems melancholic to me. 20% trusting, I put that choleric. 30% envious, the sort of, what's the phrase, Mrs. You talk about the neighbours, always trying to do one up more than the neighbours. Phlegmatic. And interesting, you'll see here, if you add those numbers up, they don't add 19, to 100. Yeah. So it's a mysterious 10% that doesn't fit. And so they used a computer algorithm to do the maths. And so envious are those people who, they don't actually mind what they achieve as long as they're better than everyone else. So, keeping up with the Joneses is the phrase, isn't it? Keeping up with the Joneses. So basically most of the population are envious. So we just want to do better than our neighbors or our friends. It's that classic Facebook thing, can we put a better holiday picture than all our friends? I'm sure none of you do it, but I do it, so that's fine. Next to the optimists, so that's the sanguine ones. So they believe that they and their partner, they basically always think they'll make the best choices. And then 20%, the pessimists, they always sort of feel that they will do the lesser of two evils. And then there's a trusting group, the cholerics, who are sort of more collaborators. And as I say, there's a 5th group that the algorithm was unable to classify in relation to a clear type of behavior. Right, we're going to do another test. Oh, someone's in the chat, Tim. Let's have a look. Yes, 10% missing, Sue. Yes, sorry, thanks. Yeah. So, which one are you? Dun, dun, dun. So we're going to have another little test. Again, if you don't want to take part, that's fine. It's not going to be, I don't think you'll be upset by the results. So I think you can take the risk. So if you want to find out, so let's just go back. We're going to try and find out which of those 4 you are. So I am now the AI, or we're all the AI, I should say, together, to find out which of those 4 you are, whether you're optimistic, pessimistic, trusting, or envious. If you want to play the game, consider this scenario. 2 people can hunt deer together, but if they are alone, they can only hunt rabbits. What do you do and why? So I'll give you a minute. 2 people can hunt deer together, but if they're alone, they can only hunt rabbits. What will you do and why? So there's a bit of a timer here. I don't know, we can just count down from 30 maybe. You all thought about what you would do? You're out in the forest with your mate. You can choose to hunt deer together, but you know if you're alone, you can catch a rabbit. What will you do? Do you trust your collaborator to be good at hunting deer, or will they let you down? Right. Have you got your answers in your head?
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Cool. Time's up. Right. So if you said you will in your brain you will hunt deer because that's the best option for both of you, because deer clearly are more tasty than rabbits, you are sanguine and optimistic. If you also would choose to hunt deer with your friend without a second thought, if it was the first thing that came into your head, you're more choleric and trusting because you just trust your colleague to be good at deer hunting and not step on a twig. If you're someone who think, no, I'll go for rabbits because I'm sure I'll catch something because my collaborator is a useless idiot, then you're melancholic or pessimistic. If you would choose to hunt rabbits because at least you will do the same or even better than the other person, so effectively you'll say, well, if I go it alone, then they've got to go it alone. So, you know, at least I will do no worse than the other person and I'll get rabbits at least. Then you're phlegmatic or envious. So no one has to admit that what they want, but if anyone fancies saying which one they came out as, anyone wishing to go for it?
Sorry.
Go on, Tim.
I actually thought I'd try and find two other people and try and persuade them to go and catch a deer.
I think you might be in the 10% then. Undefinable.
Because I know I'd be rubbish at hunting.
Oh, maybe. Sue, what do you think? Which one are you?
10% as well, because I don't like hunting, so I wouldn't go hunting. So I'm in the 10%.
You'd just starve to death with Tim S. Okay, fair enough.
I'd eat some grass.
Oh, I think you're going to say you'd eat Tim.
Well, I was thinking I could probably eat Sue.
Right.
I'm a simple soul. I'm a choleric, trusting one.
Ah, so you automatically thought, my mate might be good at hunting. Let's give it a go. Cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. Bit of fun. What in the chat box? I don't like hunting. Okay. Right. So those 16 personalities things you did, 4 of those match what we've just done. So the 4 that I've got here: diplomat, they focus on empathy and cooperation; analyst, they embrace rationality and partiality, excelling in intellectual debates; scientific and technology; explorers, most spontaneous of all, share the ability to connect with their surroundings; and sentinels are cooperative and highly practical. Did any of you come out of any of those 4 when you did your 16 personalities? Do we have any of the 4 in the room? Any hands up? Can't see any hands up. No. Okay, that's all right. So if you were one of those 4, I would say you would fit in here. So if you came out as diplomat, you're definitely in this square; analyst in this square, in the yellow square; explorer in the black square; and sentinel in the white square. So all I'm really saying is you can start to line up these different tests to try and create some sort of cohesive tool, but you can use them separately as well. But I just quite like to merge a few together.
Merlin, could I just interject there and say my role came up as explorer, not my type.
Okay.
My personality type. So I'm not sure whether that was perhaps referring to roles rather than personality type.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so you came out as explorer.
Yeah, as a role, not as personality type. Which is,
yeah, well, that's what you would come out. Then it would put you in this black box. I would put you in this black box. I think.
I've got a sudden feeling of melancholy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just more that of the 16, I would say it matches that one the most.
Right.
But I mean, what do we also say about melancholy? Serious, introverted, and cautious. Does that ring a bell, do you think, to yourself?
Yeah, definitely cautious.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe there's something in it. I mean, obviously, it's sort of reverse engineering a little bit.
Yeah.
And then this is what I would do. So again, how fluky. There's also some other things with 4 characters. I think some clever person mentioned Red Dwarf. I struggled, I think, to match these completely, but here I got, you know, this is my opinion of the four. I mean, I'd certainly, you know, what's the main character called? The guy that gets woken up. He's basically woken up, isn't he? And everyone's dead. And he's pretty miserable. Oh. Quite a lot of the time he's miserable. This chap here at the bottom left-hand corner. And then obviously the cat. The cat's a little bit more sanguine. He certainly, you know, think of cats, they often, you know, will walk up to people. Obviously, Crichton, obviously, again, trusting analyst, mathematical, you know, and then phlegmatic, envious, and so certainly Rimmer is definitely a sentinel in the sense he's always watching them and he's always envious, isn't he? He would rather destroy everything if everybody ended up with a crumb rather than work together so they might all achieve something better, you know. So I think there's some good matches there. So I think you can dissect these series with four characters into those four types. I think what's interesting to think about is, was this deliberate by the writers? Did they go away and sort of do this deliberately? Did they embrace the psychological personality types thinking to design their characters? Or did they just design these characters with perhaps the knowledge that for 2,000 years, most of us fit within one of those four character types? I don't know. I don't know is the answer.
When you write, Merlin, do you concentrate on these and deliberately write those types of characters?
So I've not really written sitcoms or ensembles in quite this way. I've written 2 TV episodes, 2 TV pilots. But I think, you know, I think if I was going to write a sitcom, it would seem silly knowing this. If we were all going to write a sitcom tomorrow, why would you not use this opportunity to help design the 4 characters? You know, if you're thinking certainly commercially, well, you know that 4 characters seems to work, and you just match each one, you know, to the personality types. I mean, thinking about, I've just suddenly thought really, because obviously the one character in Big Bang Theory that I've not matched when I've done this is, of course, Penny. Where does Penny fit? But maybe Penny's the 10%. Maybe that's what, you know, slightly thrown me. Is sometimes I struggle to match the 4, and maybe not all of these are perfect. So maybe that 10% somehow, you know, gets either shoved into one of these, because B.A. Baracus is not always calm, is he? Or sometimes the 10% is actually somebody else. Because you think of the A-Team, what did they do to the A-Team, which I think spoilt it? But they brought in this woman, didn't they, in later series, where she was the one that was always getting the jobs for them. Do you remember that? Does anyone remember that? You know, she just didn't, it just seemed to be an unnecessary character. Of course, the other one, of course, we could think about is Charlie's Angels. Again, it's sort of 3 plus Charlie. Is Charlie one of these 4 types, or is he the 10% and those other 3 fit 3 of these boxes, you know? Yeah.
2.5 Men is another example.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, you could almost argue that's slightly familial.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a situation. It tends to be one room or one large room, doesn't it? One house. And again, I don't know, where would you put the 3 male characters? Well, the cleaner might be the 4th character. What's her name?
Yeah, I think she fits in the 10%, the cleaner, because you're not really sure.
Yeah, unless she's
the personality trait. Yeah,
unless she's the sentinel.
Maybe.
So who's the main character? Was Charlie Sheen.
Yep.
So he was sort of the leader. So he could be the yellow. Actually, his brother was always miserable, wasn't he?
Yes.
So he's probably the melancholic, because he was always complaining, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then what about the young boy? Which one was he? He was quite sanguine, wasn't he, the young boy? Or do you think that's or do you think that's Charlie Sheen? Charlie Sheen was the charmer, wasn't he?
He was indeed.
So maybe he's more the sanguine one, optimistic. He was quite optimistic, wasn't he, Charlie Sheen's character? Possibly. Maybe. So maybe then the son is one of the 2 on the right, possibly trusting. I don't know. And maybe the sentinel is the cleaning lady, because she always comes in and sort of tells them what should be happening, what's going on. commenting on their behavior almost, isn't she? You know, she doesn't live the life the three of them do, which is obviously very privileged, living on this beach house. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, could be. That could be. As I say, it's fun to analyze, and it can also be a useful tool. Right. Well, I said I'd finish at 9:30, didn't I? So I should stick to that. So there we go. So to finish up, sitcoms usually based in one location, and often either revolve around a central monstrous character, or as we've possibly discovered, perhaps two monstrous characters, or a monstrous entity split into two, like in The Good Place and Porridge. And they often involve a family type structure. And in the second half, we found that we can use psychological profiling to both analyze shows, and also they could help us to design them by giving us templates for the characters that we might want to create. There we go. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you.
Great stuff. Brilliant.
Interesting, fascinating.
Yeah.
I think, if I may, everything you've said there is absolutely true, and that's how sitcoms work. But I think you've missed out the fundamental reasoning, the logic behind sitcoms, that they're in one place because it's down to being cheap and easy to film, to make programs. By having one location very often, or very few locations, obviously it's nice and easy. It's lit the same every week or however they film it. By having an ensemble cast as well, you have then got for every person, the more people you have in your ensemble cast, the more individual one-on-one relationships you can have. So there are far more stories that you can spin, and it's a way of getting more and more life out of paying, if you like, the same actors. So I think there are some very practical. This isn't belittling. It's not.
I definitely agree with you. Yeah,
but that's the reason that they exist and in the way they do.
But I think if you look, I mean, yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, if you look at the paychecks, I mean, the Friends stars were getting £1 million per episode.
Yeah, in the end.
So some, you know, some of these shows are very expensive, you know.
Yes, but when they started off, you know.
Yes, true. I mean, yeah, most of them don't have stars in. I suppose we mentioned 2.5 Men. That may be the only one I could think of. I mean, do many of them have stars?
Well, Dad's Army had well-known stars, of course, when it started, but I don't think actors were paid anything like they are nowadays.
Yeah, but definitely, I think there was definitely, I mean, I suspect quiz shows have replaced sitcoms in terms of cheapness and replayability. You know,
yes, quiz shows and what do they call it?
And reality TV.
Yeah.
I think true. Can I ask? Is it true that Dad's Army had stars before they started writing? Before it started, I thought it made stars. Like
people like John
Mercerio was already a star.
Was he? Okay,
yeah, and he got paid more than Arthur Lowe, which annoyed Arthur Lowe evidently.
But he Arthur Lowe himself was already a star. He'd been in a previous
in Coronation Street, hadn't he?
Oh, of course he had. Yes, that's it.
But it was Merlin, can I say that there's two things that I could see which have got classic ensemble. One is Star Trek.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That seemed to me to be the classic ensemble. Piece, particularly the later incarnations. Perhaps not quite so much in the very first ones, but a lot was on Captain Kirk. But the later ones, they certainly made them very much like this Next Generation was definitely a sort of ensemble type of
yes. So somebody can fill me in the third one. So Star Trek, Kirk, McCoy, and Nimoy are all three a third of our personality type, as according to what's the famous psychologist?
Edward Bono. No.
Anyway, basically, one's the ego, one's the id, and what's the third one?
Super ego.
Super ego. Yeah. So if you take those three, basically, each one represents one of those three.
But when you get to the Next Generation, it becomes they've got more subtle variations.
Yes, yes, and I haven't done that because you know, obviously when you go past 4, it gets quite complicated to analyze.
But can I be radical and say the other ensemble piece that I think is interesting is the original Top Gear team.
Yeah.
Where you had Clarkson, Hammond, and May.
Yes.
And they filled a Pacific sort of character slots. And the reason it's failed since they left is because they haven't managed to fill those slots properly. They all look a bit alike. And
they were probably the ego, the id, and the super ego, like the original Star Trek.
Yeah, but I mean they fitted.
Stanley Clarkson was definitely the ego.
Yeah, but with the latter incarnations of Top Gear, it doesn't work because they haven't got that right mix.
I quite like the new one. I quite like the new people, but they're basically like 3 brothers, though, aren't they?
Yeah, just 3 blokes, pretty similar, messing about. But there isn't the same graduation to the.
I do agree. Yeah.
It goes back to this thing, this mysterious, indefinable thing called chemistry. I think between the 3 of those ones, the famous ones, there was this chemistry, a love-hate relationship, which hasn't been replicated since. I don't think.
I think maybe the 3 now is getting closer to it.
I think they've relaxed a bit more, but they were kind of shoehorning people in, like Matt LeBlanc, weren't they? They were trying to shoehorn people in to synthesize the same kind of relationship, but it didn't work. In my opinion.
You can't. The problem that they're facing is if you try to replace them with similar personalities in the team, everyone says, "Wow, they've just done similar personalities, and they're nowhere near as good as Clark, May, and who have you." The only way I think you could do that is if you've got a perpetual team that continues, and you replace one at a time over a period of months or years. And you might laugh at this, but a perfect example of that I can think is the Blue Peter team. Back in my where they gradually, they replaced, didn't they? Christopher Trace, was it, with Peter Purvis, a lot more modern guy, but he's the normal guy. You had John Noakes, who was the stunt guy, the zany one, and you had the sort of motherly type figure who.
What I made earlier. Yeah.
But yes, quite.
So you have 3 character types, and you just repopulate them with new people.
That's right, but you do them one at a time, not all together. I suspect
but it's interesting. You have this same issue with non-fiction stuff. It's not just a case of having.
But you touched on something quite important, I think, in which is when you have the trio like the Top Gear people, the humour was spontaneous, most of it. Some of it was written, but a lot of it was spontaneous, and it comes out of the kind of the chemistry between them. And that's something you cannot write, I don't think. You can try and write it. And I watched a program many years ago about writing of Friends. And basically you have a team of writers sitting in the auditorium while they're recording the live, doing the live recording of Friends. If the audience doesn't laugh enough, and they have to try and get so many laughs a minute, I believe, they will stop. The writers will go into a huddle. They will rewrite it. The actors will go back to the beginning of the scene, and they will do it again. And they'll keep doing it until they get the laughs. It's exceedingly manipulative, and it put me absolutely right off American sitcoms in particular. Also, of course, the canned laughter is very artificial as well.
I don't like canned laughter at all.
But I find British sitcoms marginally better, but still many of them I don't find funny. But that's probably me being.
But I don't think Top Gear was spontaneous.
I'm sure there was an element of writing, but I'm sure there was also a lot of it came out of their natural characters. I think that's my perception of it.
No, that's a fantastic exception you've just put up there, Sue. MASH, and that's a fantastic ensemble cast where it's nothing like your sort of Friends or your typical American sitcom, is it? It's quite the opposite of what you've just described, Tim.
Yes, MASH
was well done.
Yeah, MASH was great. Yeah.
But Alan Alda was the main character in that one.
Yeah.
And he was a brilliant comic actor.
He took over, really, didn't he?
Yeah, that's not to say that the other actors in these other sitcoms aren't brilliant, but I don't know. I think a lot of them are just.
But he was probably the monster, didn't he? Because he used to torture Houlihan, didn't he? And always ignore what the boss was saying. You know, but he was still lovable because he was so funny and he saved lives. You know.
Maybe the clever thing that the writers do is once they realise they've got a really good performer, they actually write for that individual.
Yeah.
So the writing isn't dictating so much what the character does, but the actor's personality dictates what the writing does in future episodes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm sure they must have done that in a few series. Yeah.
So you can write for someone.
Yes, I forgot to mention that.
Didn't that happen with It's 8.5 Hot Mum, where Windsor Davis, who was the sergeant major, was not seen as the major character, but by the end he was the star.
Yes. Well, it was the chemistry between him and Don somebody, the little guy, wasn't it? Up to a point.
Yeah, but originally, he became the star of the show because he was the monster, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But he wasn't the original star.
No, I think you're right.
Came that way, yes.
I remember reading an interview with Ted Danson. That scene I showed you, he persuaded the director to let him do that head turn and then the grimace. Because it wasn't in this, it was just meant to deliver a line, but he said, let me just try something. And which obviously he just realized he could act better. He could show with his face him turning from an angel into a demon without the line. So I thought that was quite interesting.
That's what actors should do.
Yeah.
And he was in Cheers, wasn't he?
Yeah. I'm sure. Yeah, you could do the same analysis with Cheers, haven't you? Because that's I suppose the original Cheers again is the sort of three sons again, the three males again, isn't it? In a way, was the older bar owner, then Ted Danson's character, and then Woody. They were almost like grandfather, father, son, weren't they?
And there was the customers at the bar.
Yeah.
Those characters.
So where does Are You Being Served fit to the family pattern?
I think that's a bit. I don't remember that very well.
Oh, yeah, because
that is Peacock's the dad, surely.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was, but it was definitely an ensemble piece.
Yeah.
Because there was nobody who really had the dominant.
That's interesting. No, that's
role.
true. Yeah. So it's definitely.
Pussy, didn't she?
Say again. What did you say, Sue?
She had a pussy.
Yes. Right. Yes. Yes. And
they all had their own little funny lines, didn't they?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it was definitely an ensemble piece. They all had.
I'm free. Was another one. I'm free. Yeah. And there was young Mr. Grace who would come and visit, and he was about 90, and he used to totter along on a pair of sticks, didn't he? That was another standing joke. So there was a lot of repeated jokes.
I wonder whether
he had a catchphrase, didn't he? You're all doing very well.
I wonder whether the ensembles link back to maybe pantomimes, perhaps, because pantomimes seem often quite evenish in terms of who's in them.
But yeah, pantomime characters have very specific roles.
Yeah.
And very English. For some reason, I just took an interest in it the other night and just started reading up Wikipedia. And pantomime, it's a very English thing. I didn't realise this. You don't get it very much elsewhere.
Yeah.
Historically, you did in its formative stages, but not.
I think pantomime. Well, if I'm right, I think all modern performing arts came out of Commedia dell'arte, didn't they? You can spin them all.
Yeah, that certainly did.
Yeah. Certainly pantomime, and that sort of coalesced in the UK as well. Yeah, so you got that particularly English thing.
God, didn't we give a lot to the world?
We certainly do.
He's behind you.
Oh no, he's not.
Yeah. Any final questions or comments? I mean, thanks very much for the additional stuff. But I mean, as I say, I'm not an expert. I've just tried to make myself an expert.
Yeah, I was excellent. Okay, with fantastic visual aids.
Well, thank you very much.
With non-experts like you, who needs experts?
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll leave you.
Great stuff. Cheers. Appreciate that.
All right. Thanks all for coming along. See you later.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
So
well done, Merlin.